Have you ever stopped to think about why you were born into a family that often feels more like a battlefield than a home? Why, instead of finding peace and warmth, you found yourself surrounded by conflicts, pain, and challenges that seem never-ending? Perhaps you have asked yourself, why did God allow me to be born in this place? Did I do something wrong? Is this some kind of punishment? But what if I told you that, in fact, this is not a punishment, but a calling? That your soul, even before arriving here, chose this family as part of a greater purpose. Being chosen by God is not about having an easy or perfect life. On the contrary, it is about being called to something greater, something that requires strength, courage, and faith. It is about being the one who breaks cycles, who transforms pain into learning, who takes the wounds of the past and uses them as tools to build a different future. And, as difficult as it may be to accept, being born into a toxic family can be one of the greatest gifts you have ever received. Because it is there, in the midst of chaos, that you discover who you really are. It is there that you learn to grow, to strengthen yourself, and to connect with the purpose that God has placed in your life. I know that many times it seems unfair. You look around and see people who were born into loving homes with families that support them, while you had to deal with rejection, criticism, abuse, or abandonment. But God does not make mistakes. He knew exactly where to place you because He knew that you had the strength necessary to transform that pain into something powerful. You are not here by chance. You were chosen to be a light in the midst of darkness, to bring healing where there were once wounds, to be the change that your family so desperately needs. And before we continue this conversation, I want to ask you one thing. If this message is already touching your heart, if you feel that it was made for you, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel. Here, we talk about purpose, faith, and transformation, and I am sure that God has much more to reveal to you. So, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Let's embark on this journey together. Have you ever stopped to think about why you were born into a family that often feels more like a battlefield than a home? Why, instead of finding peace and warmth, you found yourself surrounded by conflicts, pain, and challenges that seem never-ending? Perhaps you have asked yourself, why did God allow me to be born in this place? Did I do something wrong? Is this some kind of punishment? But what if I told you that, in fact, this is not a punishment, but a calling? That your soul, even before arriving here, chose this family as part of a greater purpose. Being chosen by God is not about having an easy or perfect life. On the contrary, it is about being called to something greater, something that requires strength, courage, and faith. It is about being the one who breaks cycles, who transforms pain into learning, who takes the wounds of the past and uses them as tools to build a different future. And, as difficult as it may be to accept, being born into a toxic family can be one of the greatest gifts you have ever received. Because it is there, in the midst of chaos, that you discover who you really are. It is there that you learn to grow, to strengthen yourself, and to connect with the purpose that God has placed in your life. I know that many times it seems unfair. You look around and see people who were born into loving homes, with families that support them, while you had to deal with rejection, criticism, abuse, or abandonment. But God does not make mistakes. He knew exactly where to place you, because He knew that you had the strength necessary to transform that pain into something powerful. You are not here by chance. You were chosen to be a light in the midst of darkness, to bring healing where there were once wounds, to be the change that your family so desperately needs. And before we continue this conversation, I want to ask you one thing. If this message is already touching your heart, if you feel that it was made for you, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel. Here, we talk about purpose, faith, and transformation, and I am sure that God has much more to reveal to you. So, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Let's embark on this journey together. You have heard that saying that God does not place burdens greater than we can bear. Well, this applies perfectly to the family you were born into. No matter how difficult it is to accept, your soul did not choose your family by chance. Before you came into the world, God already had a plan for your life, and He knew that the challenges you would face would be exactly what you needed to grow, mature, and fulfill the purpose He has for you. Toxic families, no matter how painful they are, function as mirrors. They reflect our own wounds, our insecurities, and even the traumas we carry from other experiences. It's as if God uses these situations to show us parts of ourselves that we might never have the courage to face otherwise. You know, those attitudes or behaviors you notice in others that deeply bother you. Often they are there to teach you something about yourself. It is a confrontation, yes, but it is a necessary confrontation for your awakening. Think with me. If everything were perfect, if you had been born into a family without conflicts, pain, or challenges, would you have the same strength you have today? Would you have learned to fight, to overcome, and to seek God with such intensity? The truth is that suffering, no matter how difficult it is, brings us closer to God. It is in pain that we seek answers, that we connect with the divine, and that we find strengths we didn't even know we had. And here comes a very important point. Your family, with all its flaws, is part of the divine plan. It is not easy to see this when we are in the midst of the storm, but God uses all things for our good. As it is written in Romans 8:28, we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God. This means that even the most difficult situations, those that seem meaningless, are being used by God to shape you, to prepare you for something greater. Perhaps you are asking yourself, but why me? Why did I have to be born into a family like this? The answer is simple, yet profound. Because you are strong enough for it. God saw in you the capacity to overcome, to transform, and to be a light in the midst of darkness. He knew that despite all the difficulties, you would be able to grow and become the person He called you to be. And do you know what is even more amazing? When you start to see your family as a reflection and a challenge, something inside you changes. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstances and begin to understand that all of this is part of a process of learning and growth. It does not mean that you need to accept abusive behaviors or remain in situations that harm you, but it means that you can look at these experiences with different eyes. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What does God want to teach me through this?" This is the first step to awakening. Recognizing that your family, with all its imperfections, is an instrument of God for your growth. Of course, this is not easy. Confronting our wounds, facing our traumas, and dealing with the pains of the past requires courage. But it is in this confrontation that you find your strength. It is there, in the midst of chaos, that you discover who you really are. And here is an important reflection. Have you noticed how some of the characteristics that bother you the most in your family are also present in you? Perhaps you have inherited certain patterns of behavior or ways of thinking that, without realizing it, are holding you back. But the good news is that, as a chosen one, you have the power to break these cycles. And the first step to doing this is to recognize these patterns and decide that they will no longer define you. God did not place you in this family for you to be consumed by problems or to carry the weight of everything alone. He placed you there because He knew you would be able to transform that pain into something greater. He knew you would be able to bring light where there was once darkness. And this begins when you accept the challenge of looking within yourself, confronting your wounds, and seeking healing. Remember, your family does not define who you are. It is merely the starting point of your journey. What truly matters is what you do with the experiences you have lived. You can choose whether to allow these experiences to bring you down or to use them as fuel to grow and become the person God has called you to be. So before we continue, I want you to reflect. What are the challenges your family has placed in your life? What are these challenges trying to teach you? And more importantly, how can you use these lessons to grow and draw even closer to God? Remember what Romans 8:28 says. We know that all things work together for the good of those who love God. This includes your family, your challenges, and even the pains you carry. All of this is part of the divine plan for your life, and no matter how difficult it may be, trust that God is in control, and that He is using all of this to shape you and prepare you for something much greater. However, have you ever noticed how certain patterns repeat within families? Perhaps you have noticed that the same behaviors, the same pains, and even the same mistakes seem to pass from generation to generation, as if they were an invisible inheritance. This is what we call generational cycles. They are patterns of pain, traumas, and unhealed behaviors that are transmitted from parents to children, like a chain that never breaks. And this is exactly where your role as the chosen one comes in. God placed you in this family because He knew you would be able to interrupt these cycles. He knew you would have the strength and courage necessary to face what many before you could not. But to break these patterns, you first need to recognize them. You need to look at your family history with honesty and courage, see the wounds that have been passed down, and decide that with you, all of this will stop. Think about it. How many times have you seen the same behaviors repeat within your family? Perhaps you grew up in an environment where there was a lot of criticism, and now you realize that you also have difficulty accepting others. Or maybe you lived in a home where silence was used as a weapon, and today you find it hard to express yourself. These patterns did not arise out of nowhere. They were learned, repeated, and transmitted, generation after generation. But God chose you to be different. He called you to be the one who breaks the chain. And here is the truth. Breaking cycles is not easy. It is not something that happens overnight. It is a process that requires patience, self-awareness, and above all, faith. Because to interrupt these patterns, you need to face them head-on. You need to be willing to look at your family's wounds, at the behaviors that have hurt you, and decide that you will no longer perpetuate this. And this starts within you. Every time you choose compassion instead of anger, you are breaking a cycle. Every time you choose to forgive instead of holding a grudge, you are transforming pain into healing. Every time you choose to listen instead of judge, you are creating a new path, not just for yourself, but for all who come after you. Because the truth is that when you heal, you are not just healing yourself, you are healing your entire lineage. And do you know what is even more amazing? God did not call you to do this alone. He is with you every step of this process. He gives you the strength to face challenges, the wisdom to see patterns, and the grace to forgive both yourself and others. Because to break cycles, forgiveness is necessary. It does not mean you have to accept or justify what happened, but it means you choose not to carry the weight of resentment any longer. You choose to free yourself. Perhaps you are asking yourself, but why me? Why do I have to carry this responsibility? The answer is simple. Because you were chosen. God saw in you the ability to transform pain into purpose, to bring light where there was once darkness. He knew you would be capable of doing what many before you could not. And no matter how difficult it may be, remember that you are not alone. God is with you, and He has given you all the tools you need to fulfill this calling. And do you know what is more beautiful? When you begin to see pain this way, you realize that it does not define you. The things that happen to you, the words that hurt you, the actions that wounded you, none of this defines who you are. What defines you is what you choose to do with all of this. You can choose to carry pain as a weight, or you can choose to use it as fuel to grow, to transform, and to draw even closer to God. Perhaps you are asking yourself, but how do I do this? How do I transform pain into something positive? The answer lies in your willingness to look within yourself. It is in your courage to acknowledge the wounds, to accept that they exist, and to seek healing. And this healing begins with forgiveness. Not just forgiveness of others, but also forgiveness of yourself. Because often, we carry guilt for things that were beyond our control. But God does not want you to live bound by guilt. He wants you to be free, to leave the past behind, and to walk toward the purpose He has for you. And here is an important truth. Healing does not happen all at once. It is a process that requires patience, faith, and above all, surrender. You need to be willing to hand your pains over to God, to trust that He knows what He is doing, and to allow Him to work in you. Because when you do this, something incredible happens. Those wounds that once seemed like mere marks of pain begin to transform into sources of light. They start to remind you of the strength you have, the resilience you have developed, and the purpose that God has placed in your life. Remember, the scars you carry are not signs of weakness. They are proof that you survived. They are reminders that even in the most difficult moments, God was with you. And more than that, they are tools you can use to help others. Because when you choose to transform your pain into purpose, you are not just healing yourself. You are showing others that it is possible to overcome, that it is possible to grow, and that it is possible to find light in the midst of darkness. So, before we continue, I want you to reflect. What are the wounds you carry? What are they trying to teach you? And more importantly, how can you use these wounds to connect even more with God and with the purpose He has for you? Remember, pain is not the end of the story. It is just a part of the process. And when you choose to see pain as a gift, you are allowing God to transform your life in ways you never imagined. Trust in Him. Surrender your wounds to Him, and see how He can turn all of this into something beautiful. Because with God, even pain can become a gift. Think about it. How many times have you tried to change someone in your family, only to feel frustrated? How many times have you felt trapped in dynamics that seemed unsolvable? The truth is that you cannot change anyone. But when you choose to change yourself, when you choose to heal, you are showing others that there is a different path. You are showing that it is possible to live more lightly, more connected to God, more at peace. And do you know what is even more incredible? When you choose to heal, you are breaking cycles. You are saying no to the patterns that have held you for so long. You are choosing a different path, not just for yourself, but for all who come after you. Because your healing is not just about you. It is about the generations to come. It is about creating a new legacy based on love, faith, and freedom. But remember, healing is a process. It does not happen all at once. It is a journey that requires patience, self-awareness, and above all, faith. You will have difficult days, moments when you will feel tempted to revert to old patterns. But in those moments, remember that God is with you. He is guiding you, strengthening you, and showing you that it is possible to live differently. And here is an important reflection. What do you need to leave behind to begin your healing? What are the patterns, the resentments, or the expectations that still bind you? And more importantly, how can you connect with the truth about who you are in God? Because it is this truth that will set you free. It is this truth that will give you the strength to move forward, to heal, and to create a new path. Remember, you cannot heal your family, but you can heal yourself. And when you do this, you are creating a ripple effect. You are showing others that it is possible to live differently. You are bringing light where there was once darkness. And that is something powerful. So trust the process. Trust that God is with you, that He is guiding you, and that He has a purpose for your life. Because when you choose to heal, you are saying yes to the plan that God has for you. And this is the beginning of something incredible.